One of the questions we get asked the very most is, do you have a therapist you can recommend for me? And while we wish that we knew of therapists in every single place, in every single part of the country, we don't. So what do we tell them instead, Mel?
We say check out BetterHelp because it's online, it's at a reasonable price, and you can be matched with a therapist within 24 hours. I've also used them and they have been great. And if you don't like your therapist, guess what? Click, and get a new one.
Absolutely. It's so hard when you have an in-person therapist, if you're not clicking with them, to cut them off and get a new one. So that's not an issue with BetterHelp. So we always tell people to try BetterHelp. And if you use our promo code, which is
trybetterhelp.com/WWDN,
you get 10% off your first month.
Go ahead and try it out. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. And you know what? I'm a big fan of doing therapy where you don't have to wear pants, but nobody knows about it.
Are you wearing pants right now, Mel?
I'll see you later. Bye. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Okay, Mel, who are we talking to today?
I'm going to let her introduce herself because she's just way too cool and I want her to do herself justice.
But she's also been like an alias to us for this whole time, and now she has a real name, and it's very confusing.
So I'm Anna Tracie in the Widow Wives Club, but my real name is Tracy Razzagoni. Benson was my married name, but I am I'm one of the OG widows, right? I've been with the group since you guys started. I found the podcast early in my widow days, and it was a lifeline for me. But I'm a former FBI agent, and I'm a widow twice. Once unofficially, and once as a girlfriend, and once as a wife with 2 kids. So that's who I am.
Tracy, tell us where you are right now because it's pretty spectacular.
So right now, because I'm a widowed mom, by myself of 2 kids. I'm also with my mom, who's recently a member of our crappy club. I am at the lacrosse field with my oldest son, recording from the car while he's outside getting ready to make his goalie debut.
So if she screams and cheers, we know what's going on. It has
Yes.
nothing to do with us, Mel.
No.
That's fine. You know what? Maybe when people listen in, they can also cheer for your son.
Well, he'll probably come into the car at some point to get his rest of his gear. So
Fantastic. Okay, Tracy, where do you live?
I live on Long Island. So I am about an hour outside of New York City.
Okay. You couldn't tell with that your last name that was
Or my accent.
Yeah, none of it.
Do you see Teresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, in the wild?
I have not seen her in the wild, but my mother did get a reading from her once, before she became the Long Island medium, when she just did readings for normal people. My mother read with her, I think actually twice. So yes.
That's pretty awesome. How was it? I mean, I guess she went back, so either she didn't get information or she got lots.
She was really good. I mean, I remember listening to the recording, and she actually got a lot of stuff. I was shocked, but yeah, she was really good, surprisingly. So
That's fantastic. I don't even know where to start, Tracy, because
which is scary.
where do we go? Do you want to tell us about Widow Experience 1 or Widow Experience 2 or both or cool FBI stories or what?
I could do whatever you guys want. I could do all of the above.
Okay.
All of it. You're so cool. All of it.
But Widow Experience 1 is kind of how I got to Widow Experience 2, ironically. But yeah, so I actually met my husband through my stupid dead boyfriend. So yes.
Okay, start with the stupid dead boyfriend then. Let's go to him.
So stupid dead boyfriend was Bob. Bob and I were both from Massapequa, which is the town that I grew up in. We knew each other through mutual friends. We had met probably my sophomore year of college. He was friends with my best friend. We became like workout buddies. We used to go to the gym together, hung out a lot. And after I graduated college, we got together and we started dating. And as you did back in the 90s. We moved into the city. We got an apartment in Brooklyn. He was a grad student in neuroscience at Rutgers. I was going to law school in Manhattan. So it was kind of like, Friends was on TV. We were, living the real life Friends, I guess. We had an apartment. He was going to a neuroscience conference in Florida, and he was due to take a red-eye flight out. So we had gone out with some friends one night in November. He had left his car, and plays into how he passed away. He left his car at Newark Airport because he was at the lab during the day. He came back into Manhattan to meet me. We went for drinks with friends. And then we went back to our apartment, and he was waiting for a car service to take him to the airport at like 3 a.m. We had fallen asleep. I woke up around 2:30. He was not in bed, and I walked into the living room and found him. He had a massive asthma attack in the living room. And the reason that he had the attack was because he left his inhaler in his car, which was staged at the airport. So that was my first foray into, we were together about a year, but we had known each other for a few years. And like I said, it was, my first foray into being a widow and all the fun things that go with it, which really wasn't fun. And through Bob passing away, he had this group of female friends who he was very close with, one of which was this girl, Christine, who I, following Bob dying, started hanging out with a lot. And we used to go out to the bars out on Long Island a lot. And one night we were getting ready to go out. She's like, I need to stop home. She was still living with her parents at the time. We ran into the house, and she's like, go sit in the den and wait for me. I'm going to just run upstairs. And sitting in the den was her brother. And he was laying on the couch, and he was sick, and he's like, oh, and Christine's like, Bill, this is my friend Trace. Trace, this is Bill. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And he was watching the Islander game, which is the hockey team out here, if you're not a hockey fan. And we're both huge sports fans. And I said, oh, hey, dude, you're watching the Islander game? And he looked up and he went, huh? And unbeknownst to me, which I later found out 20 years later, that he had a crush on me ever since then. Christine was my best friend. I went to family functions. I would go to, when she got married, I was in her wedding. I hung out with Bill through the entire wedding and never gave a whiff that he had a crush on me or anything. And then I had moved to Washington, D.C. for 2 years, came back, and I took a position with the FBI out of their Queens office. And Bill and I were at a family function for Christine's son. We sat next to each other. We were joking around. I said, hey, Bill, you work at LaGuardia Airport. I'm now in Queens. We work like 10 minutes away. The Mets play in Queens. We're both diehard Mets fans. We should go to a baseball game. We went to the baseball game, had a couple of beers, and he professed his love for me. And that was how we got together.
Hey, wait. What side of the stadium were you on? Were you third baseline, first baseline?
We were on the first baseline.
Okay, this is important.
That's actually very poignant, right? Because he kind of almost got to first base, near first base.
Well, it was actually in the bar afterwards because he like barely talked to me. And then I found out it was because he was really nervous just because we were alone. And he wanted to tell me how he felt. And he needed a couple of liquid courage to tell me. And I said, why didn't you say anything? 20 years. We've known each other.
20 years.
20 years. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. So that was how we met. And that was how we got together. But because we knew each other so long, it was like we were on the fast track, and we were in our 40s.
Straight to third base, baby.
Yeah. So it was straight. Yeah. So we got engaged like pretty much 3 months later. He moved into my house. We wanted to start a family right away. And we were like I said, we fast forwarded through everything, including trying to start a family.
Hey guys, just checking in and want to say, if you are enjoying this podcast
and you want to see it keep going, maybe it's helped you through your widowhood journey and you think that it might help others on their widowhood journey, you can support that cause by joining our Patreon.
Some of the things that you get as a Patreon beneficiary are ad-free episodes, so you don't have to hear ads like this.
You also get exclusive content, and at a certain level, you might also get an exclusive t-shirt you can only get that place.
That is true. It's pretty cool. There are 4 different tiers available, so check it out. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
And as an extra bonus, very often you get your names read by one of my kids, and they will do a terrible job with the pronunciation. And that's like a bonus, I think.
I think it's kind of the best. I would much rather hear somebody butcher my name than say it correctly.
A child butcher it than an adult do it correctly. Yep. So go to patreon.com/WWDN to keep our podcast going and support the widowed cause.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Back to our regularly scheduled program.
So, how old were you when dumb boyfriend died? I'm sorry, Bob.
No.
You're not dumb.
I just say stupid things all the time. So I was 22
Okay.
when Bob passed away, and Bob was only 24.
Oh, gosh. And then
Yeah.
when you met Bill pretty quickly after that, but it took 20 years before you were in a relationship. So you were in your 40s at that point in time?
Yes.
Wow.
I was 40. Yeah, I was 43 when we started dating, and he was 45.
And was
he,
Bill ever in a long-term relationship?
yeah, we both had, over the years, like he was dating different people. I was dating different people. Part of the reason I took a transfer to DC was because I had to get out of a bad relationship. So we just never, it was kind of, we were doing our own thing, but we were, like I said, we were always friends. We always, at every family function, we sat together. Christine's wedding, on the video, we're dancing together. In the pictures, we're standing next to each other. It was very, it was like one of those fate things that had to happen. So
you said you fast-tracked having a family too, so you got married at 43, you said?
So we got married at 43, and at that point, I was trying to adopt on my own. I had found out I couldn't have kids. I was looking into adoption as a single mom. I didn't really think I was at 43, I was ever going to get married. And actually had a failed adoption a few months before Bill and I got together. And the night that Bill and I got together, I said, well, how do you feel about this, me wanting to adopt? And he goes, well, why didn't you call me back in January when you went for the other baby? And I was like, well, I'm not just going to call you out of nowhere and say, hey, Bill, want to go get a kid with me? Like, hey. So we talked about it, and we looked into IVF. Obviously, we looked into all these other options, and we kind of said, let's exhaust every option, and whatever happens, however we become parents is how we become parents. And so we had gotten engaged September of 2015. We started the adoption certification process in November. Our wedding was planned for June of 2016. And on New Year's Eve 2015, going into 2016, we matched with Liam's birth mom through Facebook. And she found a friend of ours who is another cute story. Him and his husband were trying to adopt. They did a parody video to Call Me Maybe. Kayla found the video. Yes. And it went kind of viral. Carly Rae Jepsen actually retweeted the video to help them find a match. But by the time Kayla decided she was going to place my son Liam, they had already adopted. And so they brought the situation to Billy and I and said, look, we know you guys aren't married yet, but do you want this? And we were like, yes. And Liam was born in February of 2016, who's now going to be playing lacrosse. And we were over the moon. I mean, my husband was so enamored with this child. It was like, the Messiah came. He was so just over the moon in love with Liam. It was really beautiful just watching him and the relationship that he had with his boy. Liam was the best man at our wedding. And Bill he loved being a dad. He loved his kids. I can't explain how much he loved them. As I said, I could be dying in the street and he would step over my dying body to get to my kid to give him a cookie. He's just so enamored. And then in September of 2017, Liam's birth mom called us that she was expecting again. And we ended up with Liam's biological sibling, which is my son, Colin. And he was born in May of 2018. So we have two,
Holy cow.
Are they half brothers or full brothers?
they're half.
Wow. I mean, like usually it's like you make mashed potatoes. You guys were instant potatoes. It's like you
Yes.
skipped many steps and just like, here we go,
Here we
honey.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were old. We were like, hey, we're in our
Yeah.
40s. Like, let's do this. Like, we want to have kids. And we were nervous about it being older parents. But, we got those babies home, especially, after Colin, we're like, our family's complete. Like, we
Oh.
just really, it was, yeah, we didn't have a lot of time alone together, but we were a great little family. We just had our little foursome, and it was
You
not, it
guys
was
you guys pseudo dated for like 20 years though.
right.
So
We pseudo dated for 20 years, right?
So this whole time you're working for the FBI, correct?
I was. Yeah, I was working for the FBI. I was at that point, I was a supervisor. I wasn't a street agent anymore. So I was, the hours were a little more, but I wasn't like out doing arrests or doing the things that I did as a street agent. So it made it a little bit better, for family life.
did you or did you not ever have to run down somebody and chase them and tackle them? Please say
We
yes.
did. We did, yes. Um,
I want you on my team just for anything in life. Just want to say it.
She's like, that's all I can say. We did it once. No,
I did it more than once, but yeah, we did.
Were you also in the FBI when Bob died?
No, so I didn't go into the FBI. So when Bob passed away, I had just started law school. And I went to the FBI when I was 32, 30, yeah, 32. I went in January of 2004. I joined the FBI.
I have
So
a friend who is also an FBI agent, and she came into it in the strangest way. And she and her friend were like, hey, if we're not married by the time we're this age, let's join the FBI. And then they totally did.
What?
I might know that. Actually.
Tracie, I feel like there are so many different facets to the FBI that it's hard to know what to ask. But you were in the law enforcement kind of policing role,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
But then you're also an attorney now.
Yes.
So you're kind of
Yes.
double duty,
Yes.
doubly cool.
So a lot of FBI agents are attorneys. Like there was somebody in my class that was a florist. I mean, we have people that come from all different backgrounds. So
Did she put
it's all
bugs
different.
in the flowers
No,
for
I don't know.
surveillance?
She ended up doing she ended up doing a lot of cyber stuff actually, because she was a computer science major, but she did work as a florist. I don't know if she would put a bug in a floral arrangement. I'd have to ask.
We're gonna pretend she did. That's fantastic.
But
Sorry,
yeah.
continue.
So yeah, I mean, I did as a street agent. I always worked criminal. I never worked until the very end. I worked a little bit of everything, because then I worked as general counsel. So I was actually an attorney for the FBI for the last 3 years of my career.
What did Bill do?
So Bill worked for the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, which is a state agency that runs like the airports. They run some of the transit hubs. So two of the things they control is they control the bridges and the tunnels. So he was an operations supervisor at LaGuardia Airport. And the joke with him, his claim to fame, was that the day that the Miracle on the Hudson, Sully Sullenberger.
Oh yeah.
So he was the wildlife supervisor on duty when the bird strike happened.
What does that even mean? The wildlife
so-
supervisor.
So there's actually a supervisor that is in charge of getting the geese off the birds off the runway. So at that time, he was a wildlife supervisor, and he was the one on duty when the bird strike happened. So he actually they called him in to be interviewed, because they had to determine whether they didn't, his guys didn't do their job in getting the geese off the runway. And that's why the bird strike happened, which it did not. The bird strike happened off airport property. So it was nothing that the LaGuardia team could have done, the ground team could have done to prevent it.
Now I'm just imagining Bill running down the runway, flapping his arms, yelling at the geese. Go geese. Get out of here, geese. Is that how it worked?
No, he like had a shotgun and like drove around
Oh,
in the truck. Yeah, so
perfect.
yeah.
Okay. I've learned so many things today that I didn't know were
But
things.
the time that he passed away, he was a construction supervisor. So if you've been to LaGuardia recently and all the work that they've done to refurbish it, he was one of this construction operation supervisors that did that. So yeah, so
So tell us what happened to him.
Anita, I hear we have a store.
Oh, we sure do. We've actually had it for quite a while. It's called the Snarky Grief Shop, and it's where you will find all of our best grief merch. That is, yes, a little snarky. For instance, it's where you will find the official widow card that you can pull and use at your convenience.
You can put it in your wallet, and anytime you need to use it, pull it out, play the widow card.
Yeah, we have glow-in-the-dark stickers. We have shirts that say, "Be nice, my husband is dead." We also have the ones that are not quite as jarring, so that you can wear them out in public and not feel weird. But sometimes you need that shirt.
I wear my Be Nice, My Husband is Dead to bed because I'm a little scared to go in public with it. But you've worn it on airplanes before with your kids.
Yeah, every time we go to the airport, I wear that shirt because I'm just like, listen, I got to get all these kids through security. Just be nice to me. Thank you so much. And it's worked for the most part.
Some of the less snarky grief shirts are podcast shirts or Widow Wives Club. We also have Resilient AF, right? Anita, what else we got in there?
Yeah, which we're telling everybody who cares, like Mel's mom, that means American fork because she can't know what it really means, guys.
Yeah.
Stickers and mugs and notebooks and just cool stuff that you can use to express your snarky grief. You'll find it by going to our website, shop.widowwedonow.com. There's a lot of W's in there, so just make sure that you've counted them and there's the right number.
We will link to that in the show notes, and it's also in our app, which you can get from the App Store. Can people get it from our regular website too?
Yes, if you go to widowwedonow.com, there's a link for the shop in there too.
Great. If you'd like to show your snark or have something a little more subtle, go ahead and check that out. Again, that's
shop.widowwedonow.com.
so I'll preface with my husband was not one to go to the doctor when he was sick. And he had a history of kidney stones and he would get them quite frequently. I would be like, you got to go to the doctor, you got to get this taken care of, and I was constantly on him. Like, he'd get sick and he'd be really sick. I'd be like, you need to go to the doctor and get something, and he'd like, no, I'm fine. So now fast forward to 2020, we're in lockdown. It's during COVID. And, we were very sick. We had our kids were almost 2 and 4 at the time. So they were constantly getting sick. I mean, it was, who had the flu, who had a cold, who had this, now it's COVID. And we're home. He kept getting really sick. And I kept telling him, go test for COVID. He's like, I don't have COVID, blah, blah. And we were both working, like we were both considered essential at that point. So we were both going in and out of the office at least 3 times a week and hybrid mode. So he was working at home a couple of days and he was going in, I was going in, and we were home with the kids. So we weren't like completely sealed off from the rest of the world. So he kept getting sick. And then it was May and things were just starting here to like, there was talk of things opening back up. So we were starting to go into the office more frequently. And it was a Sunday and he said, I have a kidney stone. And I said, you really need to go get that checked out. And he's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Things aren't open yet. I'm like, go to urgent care, do something. I'm like, just go. You can't, you keep getting these stones. And he's like, they're going to tell me it's COVID. I'm like, Bill, just go. So about 2 hours later, he said he had a fever. And I said, Bill, you tell me you have a kidney stone. Now you tell me you have a fever. You might have an infection. You might want to go get that checked out. He's like, I'm fine. Just give me some Tylenol. And he was in bed the entire day. About 9:00 at night, I said, do you still have the fever? He said, yes. I said, why don't you go to the emergency room? He said, if I still have the fever in the morning, I'll go. So I took the boys into their room and I slept with them in their room. He was in our room. Um, around, he kept getting up during the night, and I kept saying, you gonna, and he was coughing. Then he starts really coughing, and I'm like, Bill, you got to get this checked out. I'll go in the morning. I'll go in the morning. So I woke up. I guess it was around 6:37. He's like stumbling to the bathroom, and I hear him try to make his way back to the bedroom, and I hear a thud. And I walk in, and he's keeled over onto the floor. And long story short, he had a kidney stone that became infected. He went septic, and he had a
Oh,
heart
man.
attack. And as it turned out, what they told me at the hospital was that he had blockages, which is why he kept getting so sick. And that essentially the sepsis led to a heart attack. So that was what they told me. And it was, it was over within 24 hours. We were put in a COVID unit, even though he didn't have COVID. So I got the COVID widow treatment without actually getting any of the benefits from being a COVID widow, like any of the COVID stipends that were going around. I also had to isolate from my kids for 2 weeks because I was in the COVID unit. So I couldn't see my kids. I couldn't tell my kids that he had passed away. The same time, my dad was on kidney dialysis. And so I couldn't be around my dad. So it was like a crazy time to be widowed, because we couldn't have a funeral. We couldn't do anything. It was very, we had to do a service for him, where we were only allowed like 5 people in for the wake at a time.
So you said this was in 2020, right?
Yep.
So this isn't the height of like crazy town COVID. We don't know what's going on. Everybody's freaking out. And then he dies, and you are still navigating like that hellscape. It was a hellscape for everybody. And then also it's like triple, quadruple for you because your person has died. And
And you were in New
New
York
York.
area, which was insane. I was there too at the time, and I just remember people were not believing that, in Utah, they're like, what? And I was just like, look, we're here and seeing all these things, and here's what's going on. And they're like, no, it's fake. I'm like, not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
I think I now, because didn't you kind of join up with us around a little bit after that? I think I
Yeah, it was.
remember that you're
Yeah, it
like,
was
I'm
in
here.
June. Yeah, and well, because I listened to you guys and you talked about cheese, and I was like, these are my people. I was like, I need to, but and I see this, like, you guys were so, uh, and I have my other widow wives that joined also. I can't thank you guys enough because you made me feel less crazy. You made every other widow group I was in, it was kind of like this. I don't know. It wasn't the same kind of feel where you felt like people got you, and you broke it down in such a way that like really made me feel like you understood, and it was so relatable, and you guys were just so raw and so real, and I can't thank you guys enough for everything that you've done. Even though I'm quiet in the group, I just you've helped me, and my 2 widow wives, 3 widow wives now who have joined. You've helped us in so many ways, like even without saying it. It's just it's been really, I like I said, we can't appreciate enough what you guys have done for us.
Thank
Hmm.
you.
It goes both ways. Thank you for joining and
Yeah.
adding to the community, because I think when people who are kind of the same, I guess, not brand, that sounds dumb. When people who are of the same kind of
Vibe.
personality and vibe join together, that's something that really, kind of helps those who are not looking for something that's a little bit more sterile, maybe. But so thank you for the kind words, and we're so sorry that you and your many, many widow wives are
No, I was like,
are
she's a polygamist of
I know you're
of
a widow polygamist.
I
widow
feel like
wives.
We're sorry for that, but also thank you, and we're always glad to know you, and we've, of course, have interacted in the group from time to time.
Yeah.
So everything that you've said has been really good and helpful for others too.
So my husband and I, like I said, we're married much later in life. My husband was never married. And much like the contractor that doesn't have his own house fixed up nicely, the lawyer didn't have a will. or her estate plan in place. I feel like this, if I could help somebody after hearing what I just went through, this is the fun part. So the not so fun part, but
Is this going to be in-laws from hell?
oh, they're beyond from hell.
Okay, you have worked homicide cases with serial killers. You've become a widow twice, and you have horrifying in-laws. You should write many books.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I could write a lot of books, or it would be like a Netflix show or something. I had asked Bill about 9 months before Bill passed away. One of my closest friends passed away. His wife is part of the Widow Wives Club, and she's my first widow wife. Um, and when he passed away, they were left in a very, very dire situation, and I'll leave it at that. Um, and I had asked Bill, and I said, "Listen, I don't want to have happen to us. What if something happens to you?" And he said, and I quote, "What are you worried about? You're my wife. You get everything, and everything is for the kids." And he said, "You know what I have? I have the pension. I have a pension death benefit. I have life insurance. I have deferred comp, which is the state's basically 401k." He's like, "You know how much is in there. What are you even worried about? You got nothing to worry about." I said, I know, but we really got to get our affairs in order. Um, Fast forward, because my friend, who was also an FBI agent, had passed away unexpectedly, he had a speaking gig that he was supposed to do in London, and I was going to go and do that speaking gig in his place. Bill and I went on the trip. It turned out to be a fantastic trip. I'm so glad we took it, because Bill got to see London and we had a really great week. But before we had left, I said, "Oh my God, we don't have a will. What are we going to do?" And we drafted, and it's important that I mention it, a letter. We drafted a letter basically saying, this is what our wishes are if anything happens to us while we're on our trip. And the very first paragraph says that if one of us dies before the other, that everything goes to the surviving spouse for the benefit of the children. And that includes everything. Now, did I look through everything? Did I look to see if everything was actually naming my children as the beneficiary? No, because my husband told me everything was okay and not to worry about it.
Mm.
So fast forward, he passes away. I talk to the union rep. I start making calls to, everything. And my husband was like a nut about his deferred comp, which is it's an investment based account. So it's like checking stocks every day. And every day he would come upstairs, especially during guess how much money I lost today, or guess how much money I made today. This is how much money we have to retire. Now, again, we're older parents. You retire, FBI, you retire at the age of 50. You're eligible to retire at the age of 50. And he had 25 years at the Port Authority, so he only had to do 5 more years. So we were getting close to retirement. So we knew how much money was coming to us. We had a good picture of our finances and what was going to have to happen in the future. The other thing, and this is also important to the story, is we had decided to do a large scale renovation of our house. And we were about to start work, and COVID happened and everything shut down. We actually had a pods unit in the driveway because we were supposed to be emptying out the house to move in with my parents. So we had the contract signed, and it was a very expensive renovation. And we just decided, because the house that we had was my house, it was small, we wanted a better home for our kids. And again, I'm saying this is all comes into the story. So when he passed away and I started making all the calls, I called the state and they said, "Well, Mrs. Benson, you're not the beneficiary." And I said, "Oh, it's my son." And she said, "No,
Nope. It's his
it's,"
mom, isn't it?
she said, "it's William and Joanne Benson, who are his parents.
Knew it.
And they were designated the beneficiary when he onboarded with the Port Authority in 1995. So she said, "Don't worry, though. This is very common. The guys sometimes forget and they figure they got married and it's an automatic update. It's not. They actually have to redesignate. We know that." And, she was they were very lovely. They're like, "We know that, obviously the money's supposed to go to you and the children, but they have to do what's called a renouncement of beneficiary. And then we'll just give everything to you." So I figured, I know these people. Now, I was very close with my in-laws for 20 years. My mother-in-law wanted my husband to date me for 20 years. She was supposedly so overjoyed when we finally got together and was so happy that Billy finally settled down and got married. and married me of all people because I was such a great girl and she loved me so much. We were very close. My in-laws watched my children once a week. They babysat for the kids when I went to work, when Billy went to work. So we were a close family. There's no animosity. There was
And they were
nothing.
your best friend's
Yes,
parents
my
too.
sister-in-law was my best friend.
Yeah.
I was at every family function for the last 20 something years, even before we got married. So when I tell you that what happened next was a shock to the system like I would have never foreseen, um, it was unbelievable. So I tell my mother-in-law, I go there and I said, listen, um, the Billy never updated his beneficiaries. He forgot. Um, and she said, well, okay. And I said, and he really wanted the money to go to the kids. You know that, we need the money. I'm doing the renovation on the house. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, and she's like, I need some time before we talk about this because I'm a mess right now. And I let it go. Didn't get a lawyer. I just figured we'd settle it amongst the family. I'm figuring everybody's a disaster right now. This was completely unexpected. It's COVID. We're not allowed to do any of the normal, you know, my husband was Irish German, any of the Irish funeral type things. Like everybody's got to take their time and grieve. So I left everybody in their space and I didn't push the issue. But again, the contractors want to start work. I had to cancel the job. I lost a lot of money on that. I have two kids. I'm an FBI agent. I'm not a millionaire. Like we don't make a lot of money. And I live on Long Island, which is not exactly the cheapest place to live. My parents were, I don't want to say, my parents were comfortable. My parents were decent. They did very well in stock market. They were retired. They are retired. They also helped take care of my children. My dad completely stepped it up with my kids and was there for every ball game, everything for my children the entire time. So, here it is, like my kids now are babies still. I got a long way to go to raise them. I'm an older mom. I need the money. And we're not talking about, a $20 million estate here. We're talking about enough money to get my children through the next, 18 years of their life and get them an education and send them on their way so that I can give them a comfortable life, not an extravagant life, a comfortable life, right? I mean, it's what you would have a life insurance policy for, and any reasonable person would think I need to give my grandchildren this money. Oh, and there was also a smaller life insurance policy which she offered me, which had no beneficiary currently, but the original policy was in her name, even though we paid the premiums on it, if that makes sense, because it got bought out by another company. And so they honored her original policy and she cashed it in. And she said, well, I'll give it to you to cover the funeral expenses. And I said, no, that's okay. You guys keep it. And I did that as a gesture of good faith to say, like, you'll be taken care of, but you need to do this for me. You need to sign this money over to
You need
me
to do the right
for the
thing.
right thing and give my children the money. A couple of months later, I'm at my mother-in-law's house. I'm visiting, and I was still going there. I was visiting her. I was bringing the children there. She had mentioned to me that they couldn't babysit the kids. It was too hard for them and they couldn't babysit the kids anymore. And I said, that's okay. Well, I'll just come and we'll visit. And I mean, I was going there pretty regularly and I brought the kids there and she said, what's going on with the benefits? And I said, well, the life insurance, it ended up that I got, which was minimal. But the big money, the money that I really need, is still in your name and you need to sign it over to me. And she goes, well, I'm not signing it. And I said, well, what do you mean you're not? And now she says this in front of my kids. So we're in her basement playing. The kids are playing like right in front of us. And I can't argue with her, right? Because there's my kids sitting there. So I said, well, why wouldn't you
punch her in
sign
the
it?
face?
Right. And she's like, well, I didn't know how much money it was. Maybe he wanted us to share it. And I said, well, considering he didn't do anything since 1995 with the money, I would think that he just forgot. I said, and, before we went to London, he signed and notarized that letter saying that the kids get everything. So it's pretty clear what his wishes were. I said, but if you guys need money or you guys need some help, I'm going to help you if you guys are destitute or need some help. They live in a nicer house than I do, by the way. Um, I said, I will help you. I said, but now the lawyer in me comes out, right? And I said, as 70 and 80-year-old people, you really don't want to be taking assets into your name, because if you have to go into any kind of long-term or managed care, um, Medicare, Medicaid is going to take that money because they do a look back. So you really shouldn't be taking any assets into your name anyway. So I said, the smart thing to do, I said, and I can bring in an elder
Is to give
care
me the
attorney who can,
money.
yes, sign it over to me. I'll set it up so that, we could set up a trust for you or whatever, but sign the money over to me and then we'll work something out on the back end. Right. So now I know I got to give them something to get out of this. And as people said, it's blood money, but whatever. It's all, I, I'm trying to do the right thing, right? I'm figuring you do the right thing by me, I'll make sure you guys are comfortable and taken care of. And again, we're not talking about a $20 million estate. This isn't that much money. I'm out of my mind. I can't think straight. I can't make any decisions right now. And so again, I figure she's stuck in her grief. She can't handle the fact that she lost her son so suddenly. She wasn't allowed to go in and see him as he was dying. The only person that was allowed in the room was me. So I'm trying to be mindful of her grief and her situation. Um, I'm still going there. We don't bring it up anymore. It doesn't come up, and everything's kind of just sitting there. I keep calling the state every so often to just kind of check in and let them know we're still trying to work it out. But no, there's no movement. Every time I try to bring it up with her, she tells me she's too upset. So now we fast forward to May of 2021. And we're finally allowed to have a memorial service for him and a funeral service at the church. So we set that up. I host a luncheon. It's all her family. The only people that were there from my family were my parents and my sister and our kids. My father is running double duty as grandpa and dad with my kids. They are taking my kids everywhere. They are doing everything with my children. And she basically sat there like the queen through the entire luncheon. Everybody feels sorry for me. I lost my son, not the fact that his widow and her two children were sitting like off to the side, and just treated us like second class citizens through the entire event. And my dad was really upset. My dad's like, these are his kids, you're his wife, and she's acting like she's the widow. He's like, this is ridiculous. And my dad was really starting to lose his patience with her. I try to talk to them again.
Fight.
Yep.
Fight.
Here it comes. So July, they did a dedication ceremony at the airport. They dedicated a stretch of the roadway at LaGuardia Airport to Bill. And
Where the most
whole
geese
family
are?
comes. Yes, where the most geese are.
Okay,
And they asked me and the kids to come up and like pull the cape off the sign and the whole thing. And one of his coworkers, after they did a great job. They had breakfast for us. The fire trucks came. It was a really beautiful ceremony, and they got the kids involved, and the kids had a really great day. And everybody was so kind that he worked with, and they, really just, they really just rolled out the red carpet for us. And his boss even said, well, he said it at his wake, and he said it that day too. He said, Bill was a man of few words, but the two things that he wouldn't shut the F up about were sports and his kids. And I mean, if anything, these are his coworkers. These are people he was with every day. And they knew that the most important thing to Bill were his children. Another one of his coworkers tells me that your mother-in-law was asking about cashing in benefits. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, yeah, she was asking me, and I didn't really want to answer her. So I kind of just said, oh, well, maybe you should talk to Tracie, because I know she's been in touch with the union rep and she's been, doing this. So I called the lawyer at that point, and what I decided to do was have the lawyer draft an agreement to get them to renounce beneficiary designation. And I would give them a 20% piece of the money. But I would cash out and I would give them the money. And I got this, but I wasn't going to have the lawyer negotiate with them. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep it in the family. And all this time, I'm talking to Christine, my supposed best friend, and his other sister, and my former brother-in-law, all asking them to please help intervene on my behalf. And it was becoming increasingly clear that they were all about their mother getting this money. And they'd be like, well, Trace, how do you know? Maybe he left it to them on purpose because, he knew they needed the money. And I'm like, I was about to rip the roof off my house. Like, I don't think he's going to leave me with a giant mortgage on my house, and no way to pay it. So, no.
Just common
Um,
sense. Like,
yeah,
and basically, you're replacing his income because now he's
right,
dead and you still
right,
have to have all the same bills, but you're
right.
missing one income. So it just is replacing his income and it just makes
Yes,
sense. There's no,
exactly.
only because people want the money, they're like, "Ooh, I want that money," are they
Hmm.
deciding that maybe he wanted them to have the money.
Correct. So I'm still going to family functions. I'm still engaging with them. I'm still trying to talk to them about it. Nobody's really giving me a straight answer. And if you don't believe in signs, here's the person reaching from the beyond. In October of 2021, I get a letter in the mail addressed to what I thought was my husband. My husband was a junior, and it's addressed to William Benson at my address. And I open the letter, and it says, enclosed are the beneficiary forms you requested in order for you to make your claim to the pension death benefit. So I called New York State, and they said, well, the beneficiary has initiated the claim and they are going to take the money and we have to give it to them. So they went behind my back in July at right around the time of the dedication ceremony, while they were pretending to be this one big happy family and taking the money basically out from under me and my children. So I retain an attorney, and I had told them I was going to give them a cut of the money. So this was no secret to them that if they had signed it over, they were going to get money. So I called my mother-in-law. It was right before Halloween, and she was supposed to come and watch Liam march in a Halloween parade at his school. And I said, by the way, Grammy, because that's what we called her, I said, I've been getting letters in the mail from the state about Billy's benefits, and I wanted to set up a time that we can sit down and talk about it. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, I got a letter saying that you filed a claim without telling me. And she goes, it's my right, and we're entitled, and it's our decision. And we decided we're going to keep his pension and we'll give you the deferred comp, but we don't have to give you anything. A lawyer told us we don't have to give you anything. And
Hey,
I said, excuse me? And she's like, well, Tracie, my son wanted me to enjoy our lives, and we don't know how much time we have left. And I said, so he wanted you to enjoy your life and me and my children to struggle, Bill's children to struggle? And she's like, well, he didn't want you to have the money, Tracie. I don't know what to tell you. And I said, no, he wanted us to have the money because he signed that letter. I go, and we were going to renovate the house. You're fine. You don't need it. I need it more than you. And I said, but you're retired and you don't have anything. I have two children. And she said, you are going to raise those kids without my son. You don't need the money. And hung up on me.
Wait, that is the most non-logical thing I've ever heard.
Well, because I was going to adopt without him. So I was going to raise them alone. So I don't need the money. I'm just fine. So I call my sister-in-law. She refuses to get on the phone with me. I call my other sister-in-law, was crying to her, and I said, I don't understand. No one told me. You just went and did this behind my back, and you thought this was okay to just go behind my back. And my biggest regret, and again, because I'm not expecting this to be the response, was I didn't record the conversation because I think it would have made a world of difference if I did.
Wait, is New York a two-party consent state for recording?
No, it's not. It's a one-party consent state for recording. So I could have recorded the conversation.
I I just need everybody to be able to see Mel's posture through that whole conversation, like head in hands, rubbing her temples, like yeah,
I
you
laid
know,
I laid down for a little bit, took a
like
Klonopin.
It's it's
exasperation.
it's yeah, I mean it is about as ugly. And this is her grandchildren who she was close to, who she supposedly loved so much. I mean, she bragged to everyone how the kids, Billy adopted two boys and oh my God. And this is basically discarded them like garbage on the street.
Here's my question. Now that he is gone, is the mother-in-law saying, well, but they're not blood children?
She did. Um,
I'm gonna
she's I
go take a nap now.
um she said it to, I heard it through the grapevine. There were a few things that came through the grapevine. One was that they were in his blood. There was that he didn't want children. He had no intention of having children, and he only did it for me. He only adopted them to be nice. I had an affair,
Uh,
and that's why he didn't want me to have the money, which is not true.
What?
Yeah,
Tracie's an alien.
my father's wealthy, and that Billy knew that my father was going to take care of us so that he didn't have to leave us anything. There
The
were,
gymnastics, the mental
yeah,
gymnastics.
and there were people who were kind enough to kind of tell me, look, this is what she's telling people. This is what she's saying to people to justify her keeping the money. I retained the lawyer. I tried again and I said, look, can we please, I told my sister-in-law, who's also an attorney, as is my brother-in-law, I said, look, I really don't want your parents to have to bear the expense of, and now still, I'm trying to be magnanimous here, right? I said, look, I really don't want your parents to have to get a lawyer, and we don't need to spend all of Bill's money litigating this. Can we please just come to an equitable solution here? Can we please try to work this out? And so I had the lawyer doing this pro bono, basically doing it for free, negotiating with my sister-in-law and going back and forth like, okay, well, if we give Tracie this much and whatever. And they went back and forth for 3 months. Every time she would say, okay, this is the offer. My parents will take this. He wouldn't hear from her for like 2 weeks. And then when he called her, she'd say, no, I never agreed to that. So she was basically stalling to play games. What I later found out was the reason she was stalling to play games was because New York State pension agreed to pay them out. And so they were waiting to get the check so that they could retain counsel.
Bell's face.
The deferred comp, which is the 401k equivalent, they agreed to freeze the money because in New York State, even though you don't have to, when you have a beneficiary, your wife can't trump that. There is what's called a spousal right of election, and your spouse is entitled to a percentage of the estate regardless of who the beneficiary is. So I filed notice with the state basically saying I'm going to file for my right of election if we can't reach a settlement. So the deferred comp froze the money, but the pension did not. And so they were able to cash out basically at that point, half the value of what it was.
So I'm pretty sure that nowadays, like in 2025, you guys have a great relationship and you see them every weekend for Sunday dinner. And it's just fantastic now.
Right. Absolutely not. They have not seen my kids since October of 2021. They've essentially disowned them.
That's such a shame.
They've had and now my dad was at everything for my kids, every football practice. And my dad was sick. My dad was on kidney dialysis. He ended up having a transplant last year in the hopes of getting better because he wanted to be there for my kids. He ended up passing away December 29th.
As somebody who has been through events where families pick sides and families do mental gymnastics, but the thing that I'm referring to didn't have to necessarily do with death. I am so sorry. And some parts of your story I can really relate with when it's like, what's going on with you're just trying to do the right thing or you want the truth to be happening. And then it's just like the silence and it's like it's a betrayal and it's abandonment. And it's just it's stuff that is so far beyond, quote, just the death. And the death is enough, right?
It's enough during COVID too.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to me and also not uncommon for this to happen, unfortunately, and it sucks so bad, and I'm so sorry. I just want you to know that, like, as I'm listening and my posture is changing and my jaw's dropping, it's unbelievable what humanity can be like during these times, and I'm so sorry.
No, I'm sorry too. Like everything,
She's like,
it's
I
just,
am
no,
too.
I mean, I do. Like, I hear everybody's stories and it's like, one person's story is crazier than the next. It's like you can't believe like you're dealing with death and you're dealing with losing your person, your partner. And like, I don't know. I feel like people just don't realize that is not finite. Like that goes on forever. And just because like a year has passed, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, like you still lost your person. And other people think it's okay. Like, okay, well, 2 years is over, but I can treat her like garbage again. Like it's just not, it's beyond anything I could, and I told my mom, like, as my dad was dying, I was like, this is going to be the worst loss you're ever going to endure in your life. I'm like, and I don't think you're ready for what this is going to be. I know it's coming, but I'm telling you, this is not anything you've ever been through. And it really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, losing your partner, and especially, it's just, it's something that you're going to carry with you for the rest of your life. And for other people to just kind of dismiss that and just, you know, still do cruel and stupid things to you is
It's cruel and stupid. How
exactly.
how old are the boys now?
So the boys now are is 9, Liam is 9, and Colin will be 7 in a couple of months. So
Are you finding that to be more manageable the older they get?
no,
No. Shoot.
no, it's, you know what it is. I mean, again, like I had my parents. My dad was such a fixture at the sports. Like they've gotten really into sports. They play football, they play baseball. Now they're trying lacrosse. Like, Colin also plays soccer. That's been very therapeutic for them. That's been really helpful for them just to be part of a team. They're around other dads. It's been really great. But my dad was a fixture at everything, and he would take them to practices if I was working or if I had to get one to one field and the other to the other
Yeah.
field. Like
The
he
logistics are
was,
just,
yeah.
oh,
And now, like my mom, who, listen, my mom does a lot. I'm not, but my mom is not able to do to the same level because she's dealing with widow brain, right? And she's
yeah.
dealing with the same thing we all deal with. And so it's been hard. Like, and my dad was such a presence for them, and he loved them so much. The sun rose and set with my sons, with my dad. And so it's been hard for them because now they have to process, loss of their dad, the loss of my dad, and the loss of
Yeah.
their other grandparents as
That's what I
well.
was gonna
So,
say. Like, I feel
mhm,
really bad for them because dad dies, grandparents choose to remove themselves from them, which
mhm,
has got to sting in a different way, like,
mhm.
and I don't know how much they realize, like, how much they understand of that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's kind of an adult, that whole
Yeah,
situation is like little kids are like, what's a pension? So
yeah,
and then to have grandpa who was really close to them, like that's a lot for them. So they you should take them to get ice cream
no.
tonight and tell
Well,
Yeah.
them it's from us.
Yeah.
they know what happened.
Yeah.
It's actually
Yeah.
very funny because they know that they took all our money, that
Oh,
Grammy and
okay.
Pop took our money, and but they didn't know right away. So the therapist said when they're old enough to ask the question, you have to be honest with them. So Liam was 7, asked the question, and I answered, and he said it was Grammy and Pop that took our money because now I canceled the job for the house. Like they knew something was up, like right, they knew we didn't have money. And Liam looked at me and he said, "Wow, they're real sons of bitches." Yeah. Um, so they know that that's why we don't see them anymore. But again, my kids are adoptees, so my kids have to deal with the whole,
They've
you
got
know,
so
Jeez.
much.
and it's an open adoption, so they do know their birth mom, they know their siblings. So that's not terrible, and they know they have somewhat of an understanding as to why they were placed, which I won't get into because that's their story. But again, that's dealing with a lot, right? I mean, it's
A
still, as
lot.
adoptees, it's a lot for them to have to deal with, and they're tough kids, and I'm proud of them for so many reasons. I mean, they really are great kids.
Two ice
But
creams
they
each.
will definitely get ice cream, um, for sure.
Man, I
Yeah.
I was anticipating some stories of your former FBI life when you were catching the serial killer to be intense or to be, maybe one of the most intense things, even though I don't know what it is. And I think this one would win no matter what.
This
Because
was, yeah.
that's just it's so much loss and loss of community. It's like they've been a fixture in your life and in the boys' life. Do you have supportive community right now?
So I kind of do, but again, I have, obviously the widow wives that I have. Um, so I have that. I actually made friends with another widow from the town. The son plays baseball with Liam. They go to religion class together. They're really good friends. So I do have support that way. But I'm older than most of the moms and dads. So I do have a group, the football, we call it the football bros. We do hang out with that group of friends. But again, I'm so much older, so it's a little harder for me to kind of, I don't do the mom things, right? I don't go out with the moms. I don't do all that stuff because I'm
She
older.
doesn't know the lingo. She doesn't know
Right.
the
I don't do that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of support. I mean, I have a lot of friends who have been, my friends from the adoption community who's one of my best friends who I call her my person all the time. She's not a widow, but she's an adoptive mom. I do have a lot of that. So yes,
I
certainly
love
do.
that I love that tribes come from all different places. Like you just mentioned at least three different tribes. And that's like one of the best things we can do is have like a variety of tribes too, not just all
Mhm.
widows, not just all football bros, not just all
Right.
adoption parents,
Hmm.
a bunch of different kind of so it
Yeah.
forms a spider web.
Even though you don't have the money to diversify your portfolio, it sounds
Yes.
like you have the friends for the diversity of the friend portfolio.
Well, we did settle the ending of the
Oh,
story after
good.
we just settled in October of 2024. So it was a
Three ice
3 year,
creams.
yeah, 3 year legal battle. Court date was equally atrocious, including saying the reason that Bill didn't leave me the money. The last lie was that I'm bad with money and that's why Bill didn't leave it to
Uh,
me. So that was the last one in court. And my lawyer actually said, "You realize she's an FBI agent and you're saying she's bad with money. That's kind of like part of her background, a security clearance requirement that she has to be somewhat good with money, right? You realize what she does for a living." Um, and so yeah, they also made some allegations against me that I threatened them in the court papers, that I left them fearful because I was a law enforcement officer. None of that is true. I had to go and file like something with the security division of my job because if there's any allegation that you've been, any whiff of violence, anything, you have to tell the FBI because it was in court papers. So that was another thing. They tried to go after my livelihood as well to try and get me in trouble at
oh my
work,
gosh.
to get me to back off. But eventually we did. It was like a divorce. It was like a divorce case, a nasty divorce. But yeah, we did settle. P.S. The amount of money that they walked away with is probably less than they would have gotten had they settled with me to begin with, because by the time they paid their legal bills, they probably are
Good.
getting much less. Yeah. So
I mean, except for bad because like that's Bill's money, that's
exactly.
so
And I
frustrating.
And my husband, I mean, again, his kids were the moon and the stars, the sun, the moon, and the stars for him. But the fact remains that if he knew, I mean, would have he would have been seeding that the money went to lawyers,
Yeah.
as opposed to his kids. So
Oh
yeah.
man, Tracy. Well, golly. I'm glad it's at least semi over
Yeah.
and that you've got some tribes and that you've got your
Yes.
polygamy of widow wives
Yeah.
and hopefully it can just be chill for you for,
Yes.
for a little while.
Please.
You can have some rest and you're gonna have to tell Mel the serial killer story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Are you allowed to tell which one it is?
Yes. New York Homicide. It's the episode Brighton Beach Disappearance. It involved a Russian translator by the name of Arina Malaysiak. I'm in the episode. My partners and I, we talk about it quite a bit. She went missing in 2007 from Brooklyn. She ended up getting killed we originally thought, because at that time I worked Russian organized crime, we thought it was related to some translation work that she had done for organized crime. It was not. She had befriended this other Russian immigrant who was he was a surgeon in Russia and preyed on people who were loners in the community. And he had at least three murders under his belt. She was the third victim. We think there's probably more, but it's a really great episode. It doesn't even get into the whole story, but yeah, he was there's no federal murder statute, so I give props to to the prosecutors that worked this case for us because they were able to get him convicted using an identity theft with crime of violence enhancement to get him convicted of three murders. He died in jail.
Whoa.
Um, But yeah, it was that was a great, it's like the case of my career. It's like I'm so proud of it. Phenomenal case. But yeah, you can watch the episode. And, but it's called the
Okay.
Brighton Beach Disappearance is the name of the episode.
Thanks for being here. Do you want to answer a maybe hopefully easy question?
Sure.
What's your favorite cheese?
Okay, so this is like choosing your favorite child. I am on a smoked Gouda kick right now. But yeah, I mean, I do everything. There's not a cheese that I don't like. So
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tracie. If you'd like to keep the podcast going, will you check out our Patreon? It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, go to buymeacoffee/widow we do now.
And always, we like a nice rating and review. It helps people find the podcast when they need it. And until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
and I'm Tracie.
And we are just two young widows and one widow who's going to get 4 ice creams tonight. And we're all just trying to figure out, widow,
We
do.
Now.
Mel,
Yeah,
we have a major announcement to make.
go for it.
Did you know that right now all plans on Mint Mobile are what?
$15 a month.
Okay, that's truly ridiculous. Do you know how much regular cell phones are?
Yep.
$1 bazillion a month. 15 is less than that.
New customers get 3 months of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month if you sign up right now. And guess what? I use it. I love it. I've used it all over the country, all over the world, and it's great. And if you're wondering about phones, they have those available as well, or you can just port your own number and your current phone over to Mint Mobile. They make it so easy.
So if people are interested in trying out Mint Mobile, how can they go about doing that?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. And you know, it's interesting. When my dad died, we actually put his phone on a Mint Mobile plan because it kept his number going, but it was $15 a month. So there you go. And there's different storage plans, but you might as well just get the unlimited because it's $15 a month.
Absolutely. All right, go try it today.
That's trymintmobile.com/WWDN.